You know, life has a way of shifting unexpectedly for any of us, and that's precisely what appears to be occurring in Kody Brown's life at the moment. For more than a decade, viewers have watched Kody on Sister Wives, a man who once stood at the center of a sprawling, complicated, and often, back in the early years, he seemed so confident, his hair a little wild, his energy always running high, his words full of conviction about love, faith, and the idea that one man could build harmony within 4 marriages. But if you've been watching the show recently, you're aware that confidence has begun to wane. The family once referred to as one big house divided into 4 hearts is now fractured into shards, and in that devastation comes a rumor, and maybe even a confession, that rocked the fan base to its very foundation. Kody Brown might be thinking about taking a new wife, Telis. Now pause for a moment and let that settle in. This is the same man who has watched 3 of his marriages fail over the course of the last few years in front of his own eyes. Meri, his first wife, officially walked away after decades of emotional disconnection. Christine, the third wife, packed up and moved to Utah after 9, deciding she'd had enough of Kody's one-sided marriage. And then there's Janelle, steady, practical Janelle, who quietly separated from Kody, focusing instead on her independence and her children. Of 4 marriages, only one survives, Robin Brown, and even that marriage, based on many who've watched the latest episodes, seems tense, overwrought, practically burdened by the absence of the others. So why would Kody Brown, a man already drained by years of emotional turmoil, legal battles, and media attention, even consider adding another woman to this narrative? That's the question everybody is wondering. When Kody spoke up in the season Ars premiere, he hinted, almost offhandedly, that he'd been thinking about it. But the reasons weren't what viewers were thinking. It wasn't about rebuilding family cohesion or emotional healing. No, it was something far more human and far more complicated. He confessed that physical attraction was at the forefront of his mind, and that plain-spoken remark, spoken in a moment that felt raw and unguarded, sparked a firestorm among his fans. Robin, looking uncomfortable, reminded him he was being a bit of a pig, and fans everywhere couldn't help but think that perhaps, just perhaps, Kody was attempting to plug an underlying emptiness with a superficial fix. But let's hold the judgment for just a moment. Picture yourself in his shoes. A man who based his entire sense of self on family, suddenly standing alone in a home that once rang with children's laughter, chatter, and feet pounding down the halls. For years, he was filled with a constant stream of people who turned to him for answers, decisions, and direction. Today, he's confronted with silence, and its burden is crushing. Kody's life hasn't been about the marriages alone. It's been about faith. His faith in polygamy was the underpinning of all that he did. It informed his religion, his public persona, even how he brought up his Trubat children. But when that faith meets solitude, the outcome is complicated. Because now Kody isn't only a husband, he's a man in midlife attempting to reconcile who he is when the framework that once defined him has disintegrated. That's why the prospect of a new wife is so tantalizing and so risky. On the one hand, it might represent hope, a chance to begin anew, to be needed once more. But on the other, it might stir up past hurts, reigniting bitterness among his former wives, alienating his children even more, and exposing himself to a fresh round of legal and media attention. And let's face it, the legal angle isn't far behind. And recall too that the Browns have themselves been under investigation for engaging in the practice of polygamy. The threat of losing their home, their freedom, caused them to leave their life behind and relocate from Utah to Nevada, then Arizona. That memory has not passed, not for Kody, not for Robin, and not for viewers who saw them battle for their ability to live as they please. Here we are once again, years later, with the same question, but in a new light. Is Kody Brown truly ready to risk everything again, emotionally, legally, and spiritually, for one last chance at plural love? As we begin this chapter, one thing is certain: Kody's choice won't affect him alone. It will ripple its way through his children's lives, his ex-wives' lives, and even Robin, who appears conflicted between loyalty and quiet anger. And still, something about Kody's saga makes us tune in. Perhaps it's that, on some deep level, we recognize strands of our own humanity in his faults, the desire to mend what's broken, reconnect, not be forgotten. Yillian, whatever he does next, it will undoubtedly remake not only his family, but the show that is Sister Wives. Because sometimes the most surprising choices aren't made out of ambition, they're made out of loneliness. If you've been with Sister Wives since the start, you realize that Kody Brown's journey wasn't all about love. It was about creating something larger than himself. He once expressed, "I want a family that acts as one and not four different houses." But year by year, that vision began to deteriorate, one relationship at a time. Let's go back for a moment to when the Brown family all still shared the same roof, or at least the same spirit. Back then, there was a rhythm to their lives. Meri, Janelle, Christine, and then Robin, four wives who shared not only a husband, but a belief that family was everything. Every wife was different, had a different personality, a different approach to running the household, her own relationship with Kody. But as the seasons passed and the cameras kept rolling, something changed. The glow dissipated, the laughter grew infrequent, and slowly, but surely, the emotional chasm between Kody and his wives grew too deep to conceal. Meri felt the chill of that empty space first. Her marriage to Kody had already been fragile long before the cameras caught it. When Kody legally divorced Meri in arts handling Easter sit so that he could legally marry Robin and adopt her children, Meri's world quietly shattered. She told viewers she understood the reason, that it was for the sake of Robin's kids, but her eyes told another story. The hurt ran deep. Then there was the notorious catfishing affair, when Meri was chatting online with a person she assumed to be a man who provided friendship and emotional support, only to discover later it was a woman posing as someone else. That deception drove her and Kody further apart. Kody grew distant, and Meri conceded she felt like she was on her own in a marriage that was no longer there. And then there was Janelle, practical, subdued, self-sufficient Janelle. She was never a drama person. Her attention was always on her children, her business aspirations, and her unassuming faith that family peace was still attainable. But eventually, even Janelle started noticing that Kody's leadership and his anger were taking their toll on everyone. Janelle was often stuck in the middle, attempting to broker peace while suppressing her own mounting irritation. And of course, there was Christine, the emotional center of the family. Christine was expressive, warm, and always fantasized about that big, complete family she could boast about. But for years, she attempted to cling to the love she thought was still there. But when she began to realize how much Kody's focus had turned toward Robin, she began to lose her hope. Christine's breaking point was when she understood that she was no longer visible, neither as a wife nor even as a partner. In one memorable moment, she declared, "I can't do marriage with Kody anymore." And with that, she moved all her belongings from Flagstaff back to Utah, accompanied by her youngest daughter, Trelutely. Her exit wasn't dramatic, it was devastating. Fans called it the day the whole foundation of Sister Wives broke. Now, picture Kody witnessing all of this happen, the women he used to balance like the spokes of a wheel, each of them now drifting away. The strong patriarch found himself standing in the midst of a tempest of shattered vows, public criticism, and aching goodbyes. His love affair with Robin, initially the epitome of his new hope, turned into the source of discord. While Robin was perceived by most as Kody's favorite wife, favoritism stoked the fires of jealousy and resentment from the others. Robin, emotional and devoted, leapt to Kody's defense in every situation. But even she couldn't halt the disintegration. By the time Meri, Janelle, and Christine were all removed from the picture, Kody's whole concept of family harmony had crumbled. The Brown family wasn't merely broken, it was dispersed. And for a man whose whole sense of self was predicated on being the patriarch of a plural family, it was catastrophic. It's no wonder, then, that when whispers started flying about Kody possibly eyeing a new wife, some viewers weren't surprised, others were angry. But for a lot of viewers who've watched him for years, the possibility seemed tragically plausible. Kody is a man who doesn't know how to be without the framework of several relationships. However, taking on a new wife now, after all the grief, is like striking a match in front of dry tinder. It's dangerous, volatile, and bound to set more flames than ashes alight. And yet, here he remains, standing in the crossroads, asking himself if yet another woman, yet another relationship, could not be the missing piece to a puzzle that no longer fits. Because if there's one thing Sister Wives has taught us over the years, it's this: love, when divided, doesn't always multiply, it breaks apart. And that's exactly the place where Kody Brown finds himself, trying to gather the pieces of what once was while still reaching for what could be. When the cameras go dark and the lights dim, there is a side of Kody Brown that few get to experience: the quiet, agitated version of a man who based his identity on being a husband, a father, and a believer in plural love. But now, that foundation is crumbling. In so many ways, Kody's life has always been an open book. Every fight, every sob, every secret, all for the world to see. But behind the brash words and biting assertions, something more profound is going on. A man confronting his own mirror and asking himself the toughest question of all: who am I now? For years, Kody's purpose was being a leader, directing 4 wives, raising sure-bat kids, navigating feelings, calendars, and expectations. It wasn't easy all the time, but it provided structure. And when that began to fall apart, when Meri, Christine, and Janelle all left, it wasn't just his family that broke apart. It was his entire sense of self. He stated in interviews that polygamy made him feel powerful. It gave him purpose. But now, sitting in a nearly vacant home with Robin, the sole wife to remain, that previous assurance has the guy who used to think he could juggle 4 marriages has trouble keeping one. And that's where his inner conflict starts. Kody's internal conflict is not about if he can have another wife, it's about why he would want. Is it love or is it control? Is it comfort or fear of solitude? When you've lived for years surrounded by people, by voices, laughter, and constant interaction, silence can be unsettling. And that's exactly what Kody's facing now: silence. The family dinners, the long discussions, the holidays full of kids and chaos, all of it has faded. The once crowded Flagstaff home feels hollow, echoing with memories of what used to be. For a person like Kody, that void never stays still. It expands. He's a man accustomed to being needed, to fixing things, to being in control. But now the dynamic has changed. His grown children are forging their own ways, many of them keeping him at arm's length after all those years of strained emotions. His wives, now ex-wives, are living their own happier, more carefree lives without him. And the fans? Well, the fans have become critical. In this tempest of judgment and loss, Kody's pride has been both his armor and his weight, because even if he recognizes that he's partially responsible, to acknowledge it is to deal with the one thing he's never cared to face: vulnerability. And here's where the emotional reality is. Kody Brown isn't solely grappling with loneliness, he's grappling with legacy. For years, he told the world that plural marriage could work, that it could be healthy, balanced, and full of love. The Sister Wives show wasn't just reality TV to him, it was proof of concept, a message that said, we're different, but we're real. But now, that image is cracking. Christine's happy remarriage, Janelle's independence, Meri's self-reinvention, all of it paints a picture that maybe, just maybe, Kody's vision didn't stand the test of time. That's a hard truth to live with, especially when you've spent decades defending it. So when Kody starts discussing the possibility of bringing on a new wife, it isn't romantic. It's about re-winning that lost sense of control, a means of proving to himself and everyone else that he can continue making this lifestyle work, even if everybody else gave up on it. But beneath it all, there's something softer, more human in play as well. A desire for connection, the sort of camaraderie that doesn't stem from television cameras or unified beliefs, but from tacit knowledge, someone to talk to have dinner with, to remind him that he's not invisible. It's a longing that's not hard to fathom, even if it's all mixed up in pride and error. Because the ultimate truth is, loneliness doesn't notice who you are. It works its way into your life, little by little, creeping through the empty rooms of a home that once rang. Nevertheless, Kody is aware that whatever he decides now will have repercussions. His children will perceive it as selfish. His previous wives will perceive it as another attempt to redefine the past. And Robin, the only one who remains by his side, may perceive it as a final betrayal. That's the irony of Kody Brown's existence at this point. He's looking for serenity in the very activity that created his crisis. And whether you dislike him or not, there's something irresistibly human about that conflict. Because when all you've constructed dissolves around you and you're standing amidst the wreckage, it's normal to grab for something or someone to cling to. The question is, will this search grant Kody the redemption he desires, or just another heartbreak he can't shake? When it comes to Kody Brown, each choice he makes, particularly one as dramatic as introducing a new wife into the mix, isn't merely personal. It's legal, it's public, and it's guaranteed to generate headlines. After all, this isn't a first for Kody when it comes to balancing his faith with the law. Back in Artian Lingi Shuri, when Sister Wives premiered, audiences were captivated by its strange premise: a man, 4 wives, and a shared vision of plural family living. But behind the smiling faces and family dinners was an escalating storm. Within weeks of the show premiering, Utah authorities quietly launched an investigation into the Browns for breaking the state's anti-bigamy laws. In Utah back then, living together as a plural family was potentially a crime, even if only one of the marriages was legal. That threat sent Kody, Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Robin packing out of Utah and into Las Vegas. To the outside world, it seemed like a family vacation. To the Browns, it was a flight from potential prosecution. And then there was Brown v. Boomin, the lawsuit that brought it all crashing down. The Browns made the argument that Utah's bigamy statute trampled over their constitutional right to live and worship freely. At first, it appeared they had succeeded. In Arten Ling Isursan, a federal court concurred that the cohabitation clause was unconstitutional. But that win was short-lived. In Arten Ling Ilup, the case was dismissed on a technicality. The Attorney General of Utah had reversed policy, vowing not to prosecute consenting adults who cohabitated unless other crimes, such as fraud or abuse, were committed. Legally, the court decreed the Browns were no longer at risk. In life, that meant the family's dream of defending plural marriage had slipped away from their grasp. Flash forward to Arten Ling Arsuror. The Browns are well out of Flagstaff, Arizona, where they'd hoped for a peaceful life. But the prospect of Kody looking for a new bride resurrects ancient wounds and ancient fears. The legal environment regarding plural marriage has eased somewhat in the last few years, particularly in Utah, where the law now treats polygamy between consenting adults as a civil offense instead of a felony. Nonetheless, public wedding ceremonies, joint property ownership, and financial relationships between the various partners can raise tax issues, inheritance disputes, and custody battles. For Kody, who has been in the public eye for over a decade, any new marriage, even a spiritual one, would bring scrutiny. If not managed properly, it would attract new attention from the press as well as legal authorities. And the real hurdle, Kody remains lawfully wed to Robin Brown. The law only sees that relationship. Any other marriage, spiritual or otherwise, would have no legal status, but might, generate a legal gray area if property or money were being shared. Think of the possible ripple effects: joint accounts, insurance, mortgages, or even inheritances may be at stake if another woman were to get involved. And given Kody and Robin's track record of real estate transactions, including the highly discussed Coyote Pass property, another affair could make matters much more complicated. For Kody, these aren't simply legal documents, they're emotional touchstones. Each time he signed something, sold a piece of property, or issued a public statement regarding his marriages, it served as a reminder that his religion and the law have never really been on the same page. Today, with 3 former wives and Shirbat children gazing from the sidelines, his every action has both personal and legal repercussions. If he goes ahead with a new spiritual marriage, it could be presented as a gesture of defiance, a declaration that he's not finished living his principles, what society dictates, but in public opinion, it also might be viewed as a desperate bid to recapture control of a narrative that has gotten away from him. And there's another complexity. Legal professionals have pointed out that polygamous arrangements, even spiritual ones, can make child support or estate issues more complicated. If Kody were ever to fall ill or die, who would be entitled to make decisions, inherit property, or act for his estate? The law would probably only recognize Robin, shutting everyone else out of that legal sphere. Maybe what Kody is most afraid of is the public court of opinion. Years of Sister Wives have chronicled not only his way of life, but also his hardships, financial, emotional, and spiritual. Fans of the show, particularly older viewers over worser years of age, have seen the Browns transition from a young, optimistic family to a broken one. If Kody were to introduce a new wife at this point, it would not only create gossip, it would resurrect the whole controversy over polygamy in America. Salia, media pundits, television talk shows, and social media outlets would analyze every step, every word, every facial gesture. And with public pressure, there is private suffering. Robin, already emotionally spent over the departure of the other wives, would again come under fire. The ex-wives could be brought back in for interviews, and the children, many of whom are grown now, would have to rehash the same questions over their family's decisions. So technically, Kody Brown can look at a new wife. But the reality is that choice would come with the weight of two worlds, his religion and his independence. Each option in front of him has its cost. Choose love once more, and he risks relighting familiar legal and emotional flame. Remain where he is, and he is confronted with loneliness that has tormented him ever since his family started to deteriorate. For Kody Brown, the question isn't, can I marry another wife? It's, can I survive the expense of attempting it? If there's one thing we've learned from watching Sister Wives for over a decade now, it's this: nothing remains static in the Brown household for very long. The laughter, the tears, the family togetherness, and now the breakup, all have played out in front of tens of millions of television viewers. But now, Kody Brown is at a place few could have envisioned. A man once with 4 wives, standing almost alone now, wondering if the next thing he does is what will cement his legacy in perpetuity. In some respects, Kody's family has been a reflection of the evolving concept of family in modern America, replete with complexity, loss, and the quiet hope of rebuilding. His ex-wives, Meri, Janelle, and Christine, have all moved on in their own ways. Christine is remarried to David Woolley and has a tranquil, earthy existence in Utah. Her laugh, previously muted by irritation, now appears more radiant. People watching tend to remark that she looks genuinely happy for the first time in years, and perhaps she is. Freedom for Christine didn't simply equate with leaving Kody, but with rediscovering herself. Janelle, the practical one, is all about her kids and her autonomy. Years of being the quiet family glue finally has her living life on her own terms. Her relationship with Kody is polite, but chilly. Nice words, no warmth. She's come to terms with it. And then there's Meri. For decades, she stayed when she could have left, hoping for the connection that never truly returned. But now Meri's world has opened up. Her small business is thriving. Her confidence is back, and she's finding companionship in new places. Each of them symbolizes a different chapter in the Brown saga, but altogether, they also symbolize what Kody has lost: not only wives, but history, companionship, and a sense of belonging. Kody used to think that his mission was evident: to show that plural marriage was possible if it was done on the foundation of love and respect. But today that vision has fallen apart. His public image, previously that of a committed husband juggling multiple marriages, has changed. To some, he's now a parable of pride and imbalance. To others, a man caught in the crossfire of faith and human sentiment. The truth probably falls somewhere in between. The past few years have not been easy on Kody. Losing 3 wives, dealing with the devastating loss of his son Garrison, and bearing the brunt of criticism from millions has altered him. The cocky smile we once saw on television has mellowed his voice. Once hot-headed, now exudes weariness. And yet, beneath all that weariness, there's still a spark, a segment of Kody who refuses to relinquish the vision of family, no matter how strange it may appear. So, when he teases about taking on a new wife, it's not simply rumor. It's an expression of that inner restlessness. Perhaps for him, love remains a form of anchor. Perhaps, after all the heartbreak, he's simply attempting to reconstruct that which has been destroyed, in whatever manner he knows how. And then there's Robin, the one who remained. For years, fans labeled her the favorite, the catalyst who threw the family off balance. But lately, we've seen a different side of Robin, softer, quieter, and maybe even regretful. She's admitted that living in a broken family is not what she signed up for. Now that Kody is considering bringing on a fourth wife, Robin has a decision that's personal, yet painful. Does she support his want as she has in the past? Or does she say, at last, enough? For whatever choice Kody makes, Robin will be carrying that weight as well, emotionally, legally, and in public. Beyond the marriages, there are Shuba children, each with their own memories, loyalties, and opinions. Some have spoken out, expressing frustration toward their father. Others remain private but distant. If Kody introduces a new wife into the equation, it might open wounds that have not healed yet. No, 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 no. Most of his children grew up thinking their dad's love was conditional, that he preferred one house over the other. Another marriage would make that cleave feel even deeper. But perhaps it might also be the turning point that makes Kody have an introspection. For, at the end of the day, it's not how many wives he has, but what kind of knight of dad and man he decides to be from this day on. So what's next? Will Kody really introduce yet another woman into his life? Or will this be a wake-up call, a time to finally see where it all went? Ari? The response, for now, is not clear. But what is certain is this: Kody Brown's saga isn't a tale of one man and his wives. It's a tale of faith, pride, love, and the painful loveliness of transformation. The family we once laughed with sitting around one table now resides in different worlds, but they're still tethered, held together by years of common memories, heartache, and television history. As Sister Wives continues, one thing is certain: the story of Kody Brown isn't ending. It's simply evolving. And perhaps that's what keeps millions of viewers coming back, not for perfection, but for the reminder that even in brokenness, people keep trying to love, to rebuild, and to find meaning again. So what do you think? Is Kody Brown pursuing a second chance at love, or attempting to restore a legacy that's already been lost? Let us know in the comments, because in the world of Sister Wives, every end always leads to another start. What